one thing that's even more interesting to me is that this is sort of the tip of the iceberg of this movement. There's been a movement that started in the last years. There's an app called Robinhood. So a lot of what is commonly called retail investors use that app. What's meant by retail investors is generally just like a normal person that does not have like a fancy team and just a regular investor, commoner. So Robinhood has been, you can kind of judge by the name, obviously. Robinhood takes from the rich and gives to the poor. So they kind of pioneered this model of commission-free trading. So for each trade, you kind of like don't pay a fee for the trade itself. That's been very interesting development in this. First of all, that army of Robinhooders is what people are referring to. I've been trading stocks for it's my 4th year now. And I've been hearing over and over how all these fancy analysts and hedge fund managers come on air in TV and all these shows and just completely bash these Robinhood investors. That has been, it's like the term millennial, where millennials have been criticized left and right for things they're guilty of doing, not guilty of doing, and not even knowing about. And so same thing's been happening with Robinhood
they ruined
investors.
breakfast, the millennials. They ruined breakfast. They ruined the cinema, the millennials, yeah.
It's kind of like that funny meme that was happening. Thanks Obama. There was a thanks Obama thing for everything bad happening. And
so, that was the meme online for a while. Yeah, anything happens, thanks Obama.
Right, and so the same thing's been happening with Robinhood. Like I've been listening to these people for years, just blaming every single bad movement in the market onto the Robinhood investors. And so now it's getting to a point where Robinhood investors are not just a bunch of these people that are not following what, I don't know, whatever the experts kind of expected them to follow, but they're kind of coming together more united, and they're being organized. I don't know by whom. It's actually impossible to tell because of anonymity of Reddit. But one way or another, they're getting together, and they are now a force to be recognized, force to be dealt with.
I was also thinking about this. It's an interesting dynamic about society in general. It's a way through social media and social media organizations of people to take charge of society through investing. It's a different lever that we can all pull, that people can pull to control what happens in which companies survive or what the values of society are.
Well, and it hasn't been accessible to us traditionally.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. So I would say this is like apps like Robinhood and social media in general. That's a big positive. And it's the democratization of both financial decisions on a high level and of information.
For sure. And why need that? And I think the answer is because, for example, if I want to invest my savings with one of those fancy hedge funds, which are, some of them are managing more than 100 billion even, but they're managing all these millions and billions of dollars. Usually, I think the term hedge fund is for only billions plus. Otherwise, it's usually called mutual fund, actively managed mutual fund. And so if I want to invest with one of those, I can't. Usually, if I don't have 25 million or more in capital, I can't invest in them. So they're not accessible to the average Joe. I think a lot of these, if you don't have something like a way for you to invest in stocks, then otherwise you're stuck with, I don't know, you wait for your deposits to grow or something with very low interest rates. So it's kind of like a inequality manifestation, right? It's a manifestation of inequality where normal people don't have access to these funds, then the funds control the entire market. But what we're seeing now is like the rise of sort of people that are just investing through technology, through these simple to use apps, through commission-free trading. I mean, there's many factors that are leading to this, obviously. I think democratization of information also is another huge factor because we just simply did not have access to the same information in the 90s. But now at our fingertips, we have so much information about these companies and what's happening. So the field is getting much more even.
Even not only information, because when we were talking about information, I was mostly thinking about what are certain companies doing and news. But on even a different level, nowadays you can pretty much listen to podcasts about investing. This morning I woke up and I have an app about investing, and I just follow news there. And a lot of these things were discussed. So you can get a lot more help, a lot more education through the internet than you could ever get in person,
For sure, yeah.
One of the reasons I thought that this is a good topic to discuss is to really see how and explore how social media played a part in it, and to explore the good and the bad in relation to our other podcast as well. I think it's a really good example of how social media affects our world in general.
It is. It's one of those indirect effects of social media. When you think of the way these social media companies market themselves, stocks are never mentioned, right? You never hear Mark Zuckerberg or any of the sort of the big leaders in of these companies kind of speak about this. But they do have effects. They have a prominent effect in all aspects of society and all over the place. And sometimes those effects are well understood in advance, and other times I think they're not at all. I don't think anyone could have predicted this would happen, especially with something so inaccessible as the stock markets. I mean, the stock markets have been. One thing is when someone gets trolled on social media or comments or something, but this is people putting their money in order to wipe out a hedge fund. Like they're literally betting their own money on that. And because, there's different motivations for it. Obviously, different people want to make money, and whatever the reason is, it's definitely a new way of using social media and in that sense.
Maybe I'm overthinking it, but in a very powerful way, I see
Probably.
this.
Go ahead.
I see this as people claiming power over their own destiny in a way, because in a big part, the stock market, like it or not, agree with it or not, determines how the world works and determines who succeeds and who doesn't. Like it's a very roundabout way, but it is a powerful way, right? Money talks, as we say. If the regular person has access to that and they have power in it, even if the individual doesn't, a collection does, then that can be quite powerful. And if a company moves in a way that society disagrees, now society has a mechanism of correcting that beyond voting for somebody every 4 years.
It can definitely feel empowering or liberating to show that the average Joe has a way of resisting the system or resisting the rich people or the hotshots.
One question I would have for you: do you think investing is good for the average person? Like, what has your experience been in this sense?
Yeah, so being a very good representative of the average Joe investor, I have no background in finance or economics or anything related. My background's in computer science, so I would say it definitely feels a bit liberating to me. A little bit feeling that I kind of have a control over my own destiny a bit. Whether that's true or not, obviously, it's a very complicated subject, but it feels like that. It feels empowering that I can use my wits and come up with certain hypotheses, test it out, and make money off it if I'm right. As opposed to the notion that I just make my money through salary and there's an X amount and there's, if you get lucky, you get promoted every few years or so. And it feels very interesting to have this other tool to control your destiny or nudge yourself in a certain way. If you want to save up, if you want to pay up a loan, if you want to, buy a house, that's one way for you to generate assets. And I think it's great. It's great that we have this now at our fingertips, because before it was actually, I don't want to say impossible for average Joes, but if you're paying for every transaction that you're making, then how are you supposed to learn? If you don't have access to the information about the companies, then how are you supposed to make the right bets? Now we're in this different era where it's possible, and I think it's great. Now, having said that, there is this aspect of it that I think the adults or the elite or the people that have been around and doing this for a long time are sort of warning against, which is people can lose a lot of money because they don't know what they're doing. I generally disagree with that. I think people should be free to use their money as they wish. There's obviously extremes to this. There's fraudulent activity. People make mistakes, but no one can come and tell me that the big shots don't make mistakes. That there is any investor in the world that has done it for a substantial amount of time, years, that has not made a mistake. Everyone's made a mistake. We learn through making mistakes with anything, and maybe sometimes we lose money by making mistakes. People lose all kinds of things when they make mistakes, but it's our right to have the choice to do this. And in
Yeah,
that sense, I think it's great.
I agree with you. And there's, I suppose, 2 points that we need to add. First off, I will stress again, as you have heard in the introduction, nothing here constitutes financial advice. You do what you want, it's your money, you make the decision, right? Second off, yeah, I agree with you a lot that at the end of the day, nobody should come in and tell you how you should risk and what you should risk. And obviously, you need to be comfortable with your own life and with your own investments. Removing certain avenues of revenue for you, it can have just as bad of an effect as losing an amount of money, because overall, we need to all have control over our own lives and not have somebody dictate from on high what we can and can't do, so long as we're not hurting others.
You bet. It's definitely something that is new, and we'll learn from it. We'll keep tweaking it, but overall, I think it's a great thing that's happening.